And welcome to EarthX 2026. This is our second day. Thank you all for being here. And really, we're hitting kind of our halfway point, so please, a round of applause for everyone in this room who's being a part of this amazing event, for everyone that's been participating over the last few days, and for all the important work that you all have come here to help facilitate and catalyze and move into the future. My name is Peter Simic. I'm the CEO of EarthX. Before we get started with this amazing program, and I'm going to try to speak very briefly so we can get to it, we of course have to thank our sponsors. Our supporters, we couldn't do this without you, so thank you to all the amazing organizations and companies that are supporting us, and also to all of our partners. One of the ways that EarthX is scaling and bringing in diverse audiences and bringing in diverse topics is by working with all the incredible organizations that are on the ground out in the field that are doing the good work, and so they're putting on a lot of the different conference tracks that you guys have been experiencing over the last few days and then moving into tomorrow. Special thanks too to our volunteers. We could not do this without you, and we have a few special shout outs we want to do today for some of the corporations that have sent in some volunteers. Thank you to Santander, Consumer USA, Frost Bank, and AAA. Thank those volunteers that are around. There's no way we could organize an event this large with this footprint without all of them, so thank you guys so much. Yeah, let's hear it for the volunteers. And then another key component of our program is making sure that we have the next generation in the room, that we give opportunities for young people and students to be in the same spaces that you've been experiencing, to meet their heroes, to meet the people that are doing the important work to help save our planet. And I want to shout out to a few of the schools that have sent several students, University of Texas at Dallas, the TAM School at the University of North Texas, Duke Divinity School, Harvard University, University of Houston, and a special shout out to our high schools, DISD's own City Lab High School, Idea High School, and Pioneer Tech Arts Academy in Mesquite, which has sent a ton of students this year, so thank you guys for being part of this. This is, the flow of the event this year has been interesting. Yesterday, if you were here, you saw a bipartisan conversation on this stage during lunch. Right after that, we had 4 state representatives, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans from 4 different states, having good faith, common ground conversation about how we can still work together in a polarized world. It's EarthX's mission to bring together people from different perspectives, from different backgrounds. This morning, if you were in this room, you saw Vicki Hollub, the CEO of Occidental Petroleum, sitting down with James Clement, a rancher, Jim Blackburn, who's pioneering restoring waterways that are capturing climate. These collaborations between people that are working in different industries and different approaches and different solutions for safeguarding our future. That's what EarthX is all about. That's what we've been trying to build, is this sort of diverse community of people that we know that everyone brings different talents and different backgrounds and different ideas to the table. All of that is the brainchild of the 15-year mission of our founder, Trammell S. Crow, who I'd like to invite to the stage to say a couple of words and to tell us about why we're here together at EarthX.
Thank you, Mr. Simic. 10 years ago, I had the good fortune to sit at the table with Sylvia Earle, the lady who's the priestess of ocean. They call her her deepness. Very different from Mr. Ballard, but they called her to stage, and she was like 81 and this tall, and she came up to the stage like that. Didn't take the stairs, she leapt on the stage, Mr. Ballard. It's taken me 15 years to get my brother Harlan to come speak, which he never wants to do. He's faithfully, like a good brother, come all the time to check it out and see what the hell's going on, because like most people, they think that we're going in the deep end. This is the world's most conservative environmental event. Even Republicans feel safe here. I think it was 1978, 9. I was walking down the corridor of the Dallas Trade Mart across the highway. On a furniture showroom, there was some kind of big wall decor or something, signage, talking about Bob Ballard out in the middle of nowhere. That's where I first learned of him. Harlan has been with him off and on for years. So I get to introduce my brother, Harlan. I'm being nice. Harlan runs our company, lives upstream, and doesn't pollute my creek. Hey. Hey, Peter.
Which mic is better, this one or this one? Does it matter? This one. Oh, this one's better. Thank you. It is a little bit unusual to have your little brother. He's not my brother. He's my little brother. Inviting you up to the stage. But thank you, Trammell. I can say that the work he's done to be involved in the creation of this program these many years now, almost two decades, is something about which I'm personally deeply proud, and all of our family is proud of my little brother. He's still going to be the little brother. You can be proud of him, but he's still going to be the little brother. I have a few comments, and I won't speak too long, but I have a few comments about our honored guest. And I've been excited to see him and to hear him at this occasion today. And I was coming in, and then I saw Dr. Ballard, and he gave me this hat. Now, I had read in the newspaper that the U.S. Navy commissioned a ship named after Dr. Ballard. And that was a big deal. Dr. Ballard's with us, and that doesn't normally happen for living Americans to be so honored. But I'm wearing a hat that is a ship's hat for the U.S. Navy ship Robert D. Ballard, and I'm going to keep wearing it. I'm very proud of it. If you want to talk about Dr. Ballard and his life and accomplishments, you're going to have some time, because the length of time and the amount of activities and the accomplishments of Dr. Ballard is extreme. So I'm going to give a brief few comments, but I won't talk about all of his accomplishments because we'd have to go into the evening. We don't know the names of the individual humans who took humanity out of the Stone Age and into developing early human history. If we knew those people, we would celebrate them. They were the earliest explorers. Exploration continues to be essential to human development. We all know that exploration and explorers have captured the imagination of people everywhere. We can study the achievements of some great historical explorers: Marco Polo, Vasco da Gama, Columbus, Magellan, and many, many others. But we also want to know about and honor the important explorers of our era. Bob Ballard, our speaker today, is the most important and consequential explorer of our era. Ballard has joined the ranks of history's most important explorers as he has led our world into new discoveries, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge of our oceans and of the planet itself. So what we have here, and what the treat we have in store for us, is to hear from one of the great men of history in the field of exploration. And let's just all welcome Dr. Robert Ballard.
Wonderful introduction, but he left out one critical piece of information, particularly for you Texans. I was born on the Chisholm Trail, okay, in Wichita, Kansas, where all oceanographers come from. And right in the middle of the United States, can you imagine, the sea we saw was a lot of wheat. But what really changed my life, well, I was born 6 months after Pearl Harbor. My father was building B-17s in Wichita, and I ended up in the Mojave Desert. And he flew with Chuck Yeager. He was the guy in the back, the Gib. And I remember when I met Chuck Yeager, we were at Muroc, but it had become Edwards Air Force Base, and he says, "Oh, I remember your dad, Chet. Well, you know why we have Gibs, don't you?" And I said, "No, it's in case we crash, we have something to eat." My dad didn't think that was very funny. But my moment in life, I'm dyslexic, so and I'll probably repeat it several times because I'm so lucky to be dyslexic. Because all the research now say that dyslexics make great explorers. But I didn't know that when I was growing up. The word hadn't been invented yet. I just had real trouble spelling and struggled through, but I was able to overcome all of that. But it was seeing this movie. Oops, where do I point? There we go. This is Bobby Ballard, 12 years old, going and seeing Walt Disney's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Now, after the war ended, my father had moved me, my family and my mom and brother and sister, to the shores of San Diego. And that's when I went and saw this movie. And naturally, as you're growing up, parents always ask, "What do you want to be when you grow old?" And I said, I wanted to be Captain Nemo. And they didn't laugh. You should never laugh at a child's passion, no matter how ridiculous it sounds. So they work with me on that. They say, "Well, tell me more about the Nautilus." And I said, it was a submarine. So they took me down, and I went aboard a diesel submarine in San Diego, and I decided I wanted to be a submariner. But then my parents said, well, the Nautilus was more than a submarine. It had a window. And the window opened like the iris of a lens. And I'll never forget, because when I was growing up, I was a surfer. I never could afford a board, so I was a good body surfer. But I saw the ocean as this flat, featureless horizon. And again, I hyper-focus on things, and I hyper-focused on that Captain Nemo and his team were walking on the bottom of the ocean. And I fell in love with the fact the ocean had a bottom. And they say, well, that sounds like an oceanographer. And sure enough, right down the street from where I was living was the Scripps Institute of Oceanography. And I got a scholarship in the summer when I was in high school. And I went out and got rescued by the Coast Guard. We got hit by a rogue wave. We almost sank, and I just thought that was a hell of a wave. I remember watching it come and eat the ship. So I went down a dual path, and I continue on this dual path because the military taught me discipline, taught me how leadership, taught me so many things. Plus, it's the military that dominates my technology. Most of my sponsoring of my technology is coming from the military, whereas science does the science with the technology. But, so I went off to UC Santa Barbara, beautiful campus, looking out at the Channel Islands, and all they had was Army ROTC, because in the 1960, it was mandatory for all men to serve in ROTC, cross land-grant universities, for their first 2 years. So after the 2 years, and now 1962, I went off to, I volunteered to be a combat infantry officer during Vietnam. And I went to Fort Lewis and got trained as an Army infantry officer. There I am at Fort Lewis. But then I got a scholarship to Scripps, to USC. I'll get to Scripps in a minute. I got a scholarship to the University of Southern California, and I was on delay to call to active duty. That means they got my name, they know they got me, and as soon as I finished my degree, they got me. And so I was getting a PhD in marine geology and geophysics. And somewhere in the Pentagon, someone came across my name. What is this guy doing in the Army? And I'm now just finishing up, and there's a knock on the door in Long Beach at the time. I was working for North American Aviation during the day in college, and I had to always work. And there was a naval officer standing there with an envelope. And he handed me the envelope, and I opened it up, and it said, "Congratulations." You should never, ever read past the word congratulations. You are no longer a second lieutenant in the Army. As of this moment, you are now an ensign in the U.S. Navy, and you have 6 days to report for active duty. to a place called Subbase in New London, and another place called the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. I got out my Rand McNally trying to find out where the hell is a place, who would ever call a place a Woods Hole place? They were Scripps' arch enemy. So you had Scripps on the West Coast and you had Woods Hole in it. And so I then got in my little VW, drove across, went through Texas. It took me 2 days to get through Texas, but anyway. But all migrating birds were heading up at that time because it was in March. And so this is Bobby Ballard as a deep submergence officer. And for 30 years, on and off, in fact, I have 3 honorable discharges, all honorable, because they kept calling me in. I gotta go, get done, am I done? And then they call me back in, and they call me back in. But so anyway, but I spent a tremendous amount of time with a very unknown submarine to most people. It's called the NR-1. And it was a submarine that Rickover wanted to build a submarine with the smallest nuclear reactor. And he built this submarine. It's 130 feet long. It can only go 4 knots, so it's towed, submerged, either by a surface ship or by a submarine out of New London. And so back and forth and back and forth. But what was so amazing about the NR-1, unlike most submarines, it had a windows. I just find this so, things happen to my life that I don't have control over. Here's a kid wanting to be Captain Nemo, wanting to be in a submarine with windows. I'm pursuing a path, and a random act puts me in the very modern version of my dream. Can you believe that? Look at that puppy. But what was, at the same time, I'm now working in my world. Because everyone thinks the ocean floor is flat. In fact, they call it the floor, the dumbest word you could assign to the bottom of the ocean. The ocean has the largest mountains in the world. It has tens of thousands of active volcanoes. And this was my world. That wall on the left is off the Cayman Islands. It starts at 20,000 depth of 20,000 feet, and you surface in the surf. 20,000 foot wall, to give you a sense of scale. That little puppy, little white thing is Mount Everest. To scale against the big island of Hawaii, Mount Everest is a molehill. You see that face of the Grand Canyon, see the Grand Canyon? That is literally in a Cayman Trough, it's a ditch. What I found interesting was when this map first was published by Marie Tharp and Bruce Heason at Lamont Doherty, where they drained the ocean and they exposed the terrain down there. And this is a Mercator projection, so although everyone wants Greenland, it's not really that big, because when you take a sheet of paper and wrap it around the globe and project, it distorts the northern latitudes, in Antarctica isn't that big, but it's pretty accurate in the middle. But when you look at it, you'll see this mountain range runs around the planet like the seam on a baseball, covers 23% of the Earth's total surface area, is a single mountain range. And we went to the moon. We played golf on the moon before the first human beings ever went into this mountain range. And its importance is not only because of its tremendous size, but if you look at the Earth, see, I have always viewed the Earth as a living creature. It's a new evolving concept called the concept of Gaia, that Earth is a creature living in a symbiotic relationship with all other life forms, except one. We'll talk about that one. But anyway, but it's hard for people to realize the Earth is alive. And I say, well, you know, if you interview a mayfly in a certain part of Northern California where they have sequoia trees, and you interview that mayfly that lives for 3 days as an adult, and you ask that mayfly, do you perceive the object on which you're standing is alive? And the mayfly says, of course not. Been here all my life, 3 days. Tree hasn't done a damn thing. Okay. You are mayflies. We are creatures that are living on an Earth that came into existence 4.5 billion years and constantly changing since its evolution. Changing is right now a late teenager. So to give you a sense of how you can appreciate is, I'm going to take things you appreciate. How about volcanic eruptions? How about massive earthquakes? Let's superimpose those Earth-like features on this map, and there it is. It's speaking to you. It's showing you that the Earth is made up and designed by a series of pieces. We call them plates because they're thin like that plate. But they're dancing in a beautiful synchronized ballet. Plate tectonics, I've always taught kids that if you don't understand what I'm saying, then I don't know what I'm talking about. And scientists can give you all that gobbledygook. That means they haven't figured it out yet. All those Maxwell equations became F equals ma. I mean, when you finally figure it out. So here's plate tectonics in a nutshell. It can do three things. It can create things all along the mid-ocean ridge, along that is where the Earth is bleeding its molten blood. When we cut a human being and blood comes out, it's warm and it's liquid, it coagulates and forms new tissue. That's how we create our skin. The Earth is the same. When you cut open the Earth and pull its skin apart, it bleeds its molten blood. That blood rises up from the asthenosphere, cools, comes up at 1,200 degrees centigrade, talks about energy. Comes up at 12, there's thousands of those things once you tap into those volcanoes. But anyway, it's another story. You'll see that the Earth is not getting any bigger. It's in steady state. So if you're creating a crust somewhere, you have to be consuming it. And that's what's happening when the plates collide. And the ocean always goes under because it's heavy, and it's like walking on a waterbed. Oceanic crust is heavier, and so when it encounters the continent, it always loses. It always loses. But then it buckles up the continent, but then it cycles back into the Earth. That's subduction zone. And then the second one is the San Andreas Fault, where you have San Francisco sitting on one plate and San Diego sitting on the other, and the two cities are moving towards one another. It'll be a long time before it's a Dodger Giants across town rivalry, but it's moving about your height in your lifetime. Because they're literally moving. That's plate tectonics. Boom, bam, end of story. But no one had ever proved the concept. This was the first textbooks I threw away. Because when I was taught geology, I was told about Marshall Kay's geosynclinal cycle, which is a bunch of crap. But the only way to get a good grade is you had to regurgitate what didn't make sense because it was wrong. But then I was blessed to be a graduate student in the heyday of plate tectonics. And we wanted to go out and prove that this theory was law. Now this is fascinating. This is the age, so look along the bottom, this is the age of the oceanic crust in millions of years. So zero is ground zero, see where the black line is? That's ground zero. And you go all the way out to purple, and that's where the Earth is oldest on the ocean floor. But the Earth's been around billions of years, but the oldest crust is less than 280 million years because it's recycling. And I'll get into why recycling is important, particularly if you're after rare earths within the US EEZ. I know exactly where they are. Okay. But you'll see that the continents that have, the plates that have continents on their back are moving slower than the ones that have free run. And so you actually have the ability to go down and actually visit that. So I began my career going down physically, getting in my submarine, blowing my ballast, and heading down. And we went to a slow spreading center at 2.5 centimeters a year. Fast is 10 centimeters a year. That's how fast those plates are moving in the Pacific. So we wanted to go to both. We started with the one up on the left. It's called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And you'll see, we're working with the French. You can literally straddle the plate. You're standing on the right where the yellow, that's a French submarine, is the yellow one, that's Africa and North America, excuse me, the Eurasian plate, Europe and Asia. And on the left is the North American plate. And literally you can drive from plate to plate in a short minutes. But on the East Pacific Rise, the plates are moving so rapidly they pull it out. So it's called the East Pacific Rise. And that's where a magnificent amount of heat energy is coming out. So we were able to go in there and prove the theory of plate tectonics, made it law, threw away that book. When I was in college, I double majored, double minored. I majored in geology and chemistry, and I minored in math and physics. Self-inflicted gunshot wound. But anyway, And when I was taking my chemistry class, they couldn't balance the equations. We knew the ocean was salty, but we didn't know how it got its chemistry because we went around and looked at rivers and they had a different chemistry. The rivers were bringing in stuff and the chemistry was different. So something was going on and we didn't know the answer until I made this discovery. I was driving along my submarine. And remember, most of the discoveries I'm going to talk about, I bumped into. You have to understand the nature of exploration. I was looking for A and ran into B. And we were after a heat loss in our models, never expecting to see what we would discover. So when I saw this black smoker, and it's not smoke, it's polymetallic sulfides, copper, lead, silver, zinc, and gold in commercial concentrations, spewing out and being deposited all along that ridge crest, plus rare earths. This is the genesis of rare earths that created the discussions we're having now. I just was testifying before Congress, had a one for and against, and I was in the middle of trying to navigate, okay? I got a joke on that one, but don't have the time to give it to you. But anyway, so I saw that thing, and I stupidly called it a smoker, but it's microcrystals. And I said to my pilot, I want to see how hot it is, and he says, I don't. I said, I do. Okay, so just get over there. And I went over there and I took out my probe and I stuck it in and it pegged off scale. Just went, and my pilot went, as real scientific, that's really hot. Okay. By the way, Bob, it can melt our porthole, so can we back up? Okay. But that, when we took this circulation, we now realize that the entire volume of the world's oceans is constantly circulating deep into the ocean, bringing things from rivers in the blue down and depositing them at the magma chamber, bringing up the deposits. And when you put that in it, you balanced all the equations. And we threw away the chemistry book. But the third book I threw away was what we found living around these guys. Because we've been saying, the deep sea is a desert, there's nothing going on, there's no, photosynthesis is why we have life, because of the energy of the sun and its photonic energy comes in. Chlorophyll capture it, fixed carbon, and that's the food chain. That's half the food chain. We didn't know about this other one. When I came across these puppies, bumped into them. What are you doing here? Those tube worms are 13 feet tall. They're sticking out there. That feathery thing is their lung. And they have human-like blood. Look at the clams, giant clams. See the blood? Because the water is anoxic, but it comes and goes. If you're in the current and you're a clam, you don't run this. You either get oxygen or you don't get oxygen. You store it in your hemoglobin. But what was really weird is when I got the first one, I cut it open. No mouth, no gut, had no internal organs. How do it? No. And it turns out it cut a deal with a primitive bacterium, an archaean bacterium we didn't know much about, called an extremophile. And the bacteria had a conversation with the tube worm, and they say, so here's the deal, kids. I don't like living in a fire hydrant. Can I live in your body? And then I want you to inhale poisonous hydrogen. Don't worry about it. I know it kills everything, but I'll make sure you don't die. And you just give me that hydrogen sulfide, and I'll fix carbon in the dark in chemosynthesis. And they struck up the deal. Well, what's important about this is why the heck are we launching out to the moons of Jupiter and Europa? Because they have oceans. The moons of Jupiter, particularly Enceladus and Gamium, there's several different ones that have oceans. And they have active volcanism. They should have life. We're not alone in the solar system. We're not alone. But I don't want to live there. You can have Mars all you want, okay? We can't even terraform the Mojave, the Arizona desert. They tried to build a dome and live in it, and then that's another story as well. When they say I saw a Earth-like planet, an Earth-like planet just 1 million light years away, well, that's a long trip. Because humans cannot exceed the speed of light. You read infinite mass in your heart fails long before. So we are stuck on this planet. There's no plan B for the human race. And that's why what we're talking about today is very important. How do we harmonize our needs and our desires? But I was frustrated with how I was getting to work. I was spending most of my time in an elevator, going up and down, and spending. So I then went off to Stanford during when Silicon Valley was blasting away. I was teaching geophysics at Stanford on sabbatical, and everything was happening in Silicon Valley. And so I thought, what I didn't do is say, well, you know, if I put this together and that together, I can make a cell phone. But I didn't think that. I could do it like David Packard and Hewlett in their garage, okay? I came up, because I think differently, I see the world through a different lens, said, I published this in 1981. National Geographic was doing a thing on what's the future of ocean exploration, and I said this. I called it telepresence. The idea was developing the technology to move your spirit at the speed of light, indestructible, instead of your body. And I came back and I created the Deep Submergence Lab at Woods Hole in cooperation with MIT, and I got a bunch of engineers. And I love engineers because most of NASA's engineers are dyslexic. Dyslexics make great engineers. And I showed them this cartoon and they said, "You're nuts." And I said, "That's certified. Let's not worry about that." What law of physics have I violated? Because we knew about this Navy mapping systems, remember? They didn't know, I knew, you knew. Us military guys knew all the technology we had that hadn't been released to the public. And I said, it all exists, and this became my dream, to then create that technology, and I turned it into an engineering design. So naturally, as a scientist at Woods Hole, I went to the National Science Foundation. I said, what do you think? And they said, well, I thought you loved submarines. I did, but they're passé. Well, we haven't been in them yet, no, but they're passé. If you study paradigm shifts, you have early adopters, a rapid acceptance, and then a slow death, but the next paradigm is ready to go when the last one is in place. And scientists do not want to have a double jeopardy. They'll risk their ideas, they don't want to risk their technology, and this hadn't been built yet, and I said, well, I'll build it. They said, well, we're not interested. Come back to us. So I went to the military, my buddies. And I said, what do you think? And they went, love it. You're removing humans from the battlefield. The battlefield of the future, humans won't be in the battlefield. Their robots will be. And that's another conversation. Let's go get in a skiff and we'll talk about it. But anyway. And so they said, we'll fund it, but you got to do us a favor. No good deed goes unpunished. We lost some submarines during the Cold War. Yeah, I know very much about them, the Thresher and the Scorpion. Well, the Scorpion has nuclear weapons on it. Yeah, I know that. Well, we don't like them laying around. And we know where they are because we had an ability to know where, I'm looking at the Admiral right here. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. And so it became a tale of two cities, a tale of two stories. The Titanic, I said, we need a cover. And I said, well, why don't we go and look for the Titanic? And my commanding officer, Vice Admiral Ron Thumman, who was Oppo 2, said, you're nuts. And I said, I know, everyone says that. But we need a cover because it turns out that the Scorpion, this is the shots of the Scorpion, declassified, sir, sat between the Thresher and the Scorpion. So I said, my ship is going to be in the Azores, and I need to get down, but we're gonna tell the world I'm going to the Titanic, and then we had a team aboard that can tell us if we've been tagged, and they said you weren't tagged, so then I could head down to the Scorpion. And that's another long story about how I had French aboard and National Geographic aboard, and they were totally unaware of my top secret mission, and I did it right under their nose, but get my book, Into the Deep. But the Titanic, what I learned from the Scorpion was that when it imploded way above, ended up at 11,000 feet, so it imploded way above that at a certain depth. And then it fell, and the heavy pieces went down like bowling balls, but then the current carried the lighter features, and it created a long, mile-long debris field. And I said, didn't the Titanic do the same thing? Now I know how to find it with a camera on a string. And I did it in 5 days, because I didn't mow the lawn. I went, picked up the debris field, and walked it right in. Same with the Bismarck. And there she is, sitting up there. No human remains, just their shoes, the way they were attached to the body. They don't eat leather. And then they wanted me to go inside the forward torpedo room of the Scorpion, so I had another cover cruise where I was going to go down the grand staircase of the Titanic. And so since I was now known by that were being tracked, we did the Titanic first this time, came in, and I went on all the talk shows as a decoy while my team went back out to the Scorpion. Never mind. Anyway. But sorry about that. But anyway, then when I went down in the Titanic and I saw the chandelier reflecting my lights, and I saw the deeper I went, the more I realized that the deep sea is the largest museum on the planet. If you go online, we've lost 3 million ships. 3 million chapters of human history, most of which have not discovered, and way back during Roman and Greek time, they were using 10% of their shipping. And so I went on to do the Bismarck. I did PT 109. I found the Yorktown. I always like it when people ask, how do you know it's a Yorktown? It said Yorktown on the back, you know. But then I got into ancient trade routes, being able to find the debris fields and walk them in. And I just had amazing experience. But the Black Sea, wow, that's the place. No, this is where the biblical flood occurred. Mount Ararat's right there. I went in and dated when it suddenly flipped, 800 BPE, about 6,000 BC. So anyway, because there's no oxygen, everything's perfectly preserved. Human remains of Greeks from the 350 BC with all their DNA. But then, what are you doing for me lately? Okay. Well, quickly. As you know, Napoleon gave up on colonizing the Western Hemisphere. You ready for this? Because of the riots in Haiti. Things don't change, do they? Isn't that wild? He says, I threw in his hand, okay? And he also just lost the war with England, and he had to pay a war debt, and he went to Jefferson, and Jefferson said, this is cool. It doubled the United States. But more importantly, it changed the whole economic engine of the United States. Because pre-Louisiana Purchase, we had slavery in the South, we had so-so raw materials, and mostly going to England, coming back more expensive, and then so-so farmland in the middle. But once we acquired the Louisiana Purchase, we doubled the size of the United States. And all historians will tell you the acquisition of the Louisiana Purchase made America the great nation it is today. Now, how was it used? This is the debate. Lewis and Clark, I'll show you that my orders I got from our president were the identical orders Jefferson gave Captain Meriwether Lewis. Your job is to explore. So my job is not to have a dog in the fight. My dog is to tell you what I know. Okay. And look, we had beautiful farmland. We had national parks. And we had the Berkeley Pit, and we had oil, and we had all the, so it's a complex tapestry of users. But that's not my job. My job is to find it. So President Reagan picks up a pen, and for the price of a pen, redoubles the United States, acquiring, with the stroke of a pen, declaring 200 miles off our shores, created a new America that is equal to 5.5 Louisiana Purchases. 5.5. I assembled a great team. We went nationwide, won a competition to conduct what I call the second Lewis and Clark expedition. But since Allison Fundis, who's our president, and most of our team, 60% of our team, we're very comparable to the universities, where women are 60%. I call it the Lois and Clark expedition. But then women love that, and I look at them and I remember who Clark Kent was. Okay. So our job, they've given us the most difficult part of the U.S. exclusive economic zone. But my orders, you gotta love it, were identical. See, this is what, signed by Thomas Jefferson to Captain Meriwether Lewis. Well, I'm Commander Robert Ballard, says he's an Army guy. You remember captains that don't have their scrambled eggs. But anyway, the object of your mission is to explore for the purpose of commerce. So we have now been tasked to find out what we own. We're 4 years, going 5 years into it. And so I acquired a ship. Duh. What'd I name it? The U.S. EV, not RV. I think we're the only ones that are EVs. I said, well, we're exploration, so. And our job is to boldly go where no human has gone before in America. It's a pretty cool mission. But here's as I pointed out several times, I constantly bump into things. I started going to sea again when I was 17, been going to sea ever since. I've done 170 some expeditions. And I commonly just bump into, I'm the first human, or you should say our team is the first humans to set their eye on a piece of America never seen by anyone. So we bump into things. So how do we deal with the uncertainty of bumping into things? Because we can't take experts of all the disciplines with us, plus they'll charge us money, and I don't you know, I'm running a ship. So I say to the experts, sign up. We're gonna run a doctor on call project. And if you're a biogeochemist or a botanist or whatever you are, sign up. We work 24 hours a day and get in our book, and if we make a discovery, we'll call you. So we have to have complete satellite link back to shore, to our inner space, and there's my command center up on the upper right. And people get confused by 45 screens. Dyslexics love it. You look at the 45 screens, because remember, we're working in total darkness. They say, what's it like to explore a mountain range under the sea? I say, it's like being in a helicopter at night with a flashlight in a snowstorm. That's what we have to do. Okay? So you have to imagine it. It's all in your ability to imagine your terrain. So I can see in 3D. I look at everything and I just close my eyes and it's perfectly clear to me. But then we beam it, we put it on the satellite, beam it back to the Inner Space Center, and then go out on internet to level 3, 10 gigabits of bandwidth, to all the universities. And we sign up everyone that says, see the guy that's sitting there in the lower corner there, you see that clipboard? That's all the experts. And it turns out we make almost all our major discoveries at 1 in the morning on Sunday. Should we only put it down for that time? But anyway. And so we come across something, we look in the book, and Dr. Sarah Mitchell or something is the expert on call that moment. We call her. The system thinks it's at the university, it's just a regular phone number. And we call Sarah and wake her up. She wakes up, and we say, boot up your laptop. We're gonna beam you our discovery that we're looking at right this second, because time's money. We need a decision. Is this a big deal or not? We promise you one-way video. Just us to you, not you to us, okay? And 90% of the time, that expert flies out of bed and has to be close to a university or a command center. I now have one in my house, so I don't have to roll out of bed and go there, okay? And we give him the ship long enough to characterize it and write a beautiful science proposal. But you come back, but is it good? Good. You got enough? Good. Bye. And we move on and we move on. So we're constantly rolling along making discoveries. And so this is another version of that. But it's so cool. So we also then, here are the scientists that have their little command centers, and they're not expensive at all. There's a few $1,000s. You got some TV monitors and some laptops. The first one, ours, we paid for that one. But to have you clone it is very inexpensive. I have it in my home. I just added a little more bandwidth to my pipe. But now, here's the new game now, is what we call force multipliers. You know, and what you're witnessing it right now in the Iranian war. The war is a war of robots, and who has the cheapest ones? And we're losing on that one. So the key is be able to put a pack of dogs down. You know, when you put a pack of dogs down and let them hunt, and then they come back and tell you when they found something while you're working on something else, say this is more important. So we now have this is the University of New Hampshire provides their DRIX vehicle, which is normally a mapping vehicle. We turned it into a mother boat. And now with the new orbit satellites, we can get this vehicle in the water, give it a bunch of dogs, mid-water or bottom dogs, and they take off. And we can communicate, we can get miles and miles and miles away. It's really funny when the operators on the Nautilus are operating DRIX, and you get into the vehicle in your mind. And then they say, well, where's my body? And they search for the ship, and they find we're 40 miles away. And they say, you know, it's like getting up in Connecticut, being under the water and then going to the bathroom. Well, this is just getting up and finding your body's 40 miles away. But again, with electronic travel, you'll do it in the Serengeti from your house anyway. Anyone want to get into that business? Let me know. But this is my true legacy. This is what I'm proudest of all. You know, this touches my soul. I'll probably get choked up here because it's that important to me. America has a very small population and a falling percentage of the global population. But we're 320 million, I don't know the latest number of our population, and China's clocking in at 1.5, and India just passed China. How are we going to compete when we're outnumbered and put them together 6-1, unless we go after every American we can lay our hands on? Every American we can lay our hands on. And if you don't see your face, so I'll show you what we do. Find a face in there that's not represented by our population. We have every kind of American on our team as role models because we want a child to see their face in that older person. And I'm also a member of an organization called the Horatio Alger Association, where they go to where they take kids that have a pretty tough childhood. And you don't even go down the road of what they went through. But then they still had the guts to go to school and get good grades and get admitted to MIT and Caltech and the great universities of America, but they don't have a whatever, they don't have the resources to pay for it. And we give them complete, full scholarships, health care, and a family. And what's really interesting, a lot of Horatio Alger scholars are also Boys and Girls Clubs kids. And the Boys and Girls Clubs of America is sponsored by the Department of Justice because of teenage crime. Most teenage crime occurs the moment a school ends and a parent might show up. So from 2 to 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, those kids are normally taken in by the gangs. And like in Peoria where I was, they have their Boys and Girls right near them, so that they can literally go straight from school to a Boys and Girls Club. And you go into there, and I've been to all over the United States, and it says, do your homework. And then you can do something. My new dream is to be able to reach every Boys and Girls Club in America to show them their role models and say, you can do it. That's my goal. And here we are from our studios. We have these beautiful studios aboard the ship operating 24 hours a day, any time zone, and out to the kids, wherever we find them. I also did a program because I was also a Boy Scout, and we do Boy Scout camps, and I even had a camp Ballard at one of the jamborees. So I'm after, because remember, I'm 13th generation, and I'm the first to go to college. So I'm for the common person, and I want to reach everybody and educate them. All right, I think. There's my daughter, Emily Rose with a button nose, right there, my fellow dyslexic. Going out, all my kids have shipped out with me, including my wife as well. My daughter did it for, I think, what, 6, 7 years. She's now in grad school in video production like her mom. And these are our stats. We're in our 17th year. This is how much we've mapped. We've done 2 Texas so far, going after more Texases, but just to give you a sense of statistics, and our reach is in the millions. And what we do, it's really fun. You want to go online, nautiluslive.org, see, and sign up through whatever social media platform you are, that if we make a discovery, you will get an instant notification the second it's made. And what we see is we keep score of who's watching us, and it just goes viral on Reddit. We have millions of people suddenly appear. So make sure you follow us. I'm going to be out there on the Nautilus because National Geographic, who I'm an explorer at large for National Geographic, is partnered with Disney, and Disney, Bob Iger is a good buddy, and he also owns ABC, and he wants me to come live from America on the 4th of July, on July 4th. So watch for that, but I don't think I could have a better job. Thank you very much.